So, what brings you to visit lonely old one Samdi?
Yo guys, what's going on? It's your boy Big Arc back with another WoW video. Today I am on my Shadow Priest as I will be going in depth on a new and updated guide for PVE content. So stick around, stay tuned, and hopefully you'll enjoy the guide that I have to bring. So before we get into the exact talents, rotation, and builds you want to be looking for, just want to go into the Shadow Priest in general and the Priest class in general. So if you're new to the game or if you've never played the Priest before, Priest is a caster spec. It has 2 healing specs and 1 damage spec. Shadow is the damage spec, although some could argue that Discipline does pump out some pretty good DPS while healing. But, you know, this is a Shadow video, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. So one thing that I can kind of compare it to is just a kind of Affliction Warlock. So the whole kind of idea of a Shadow Priest is just kind of keeping dots up on multiple targets while using your spells that build Insanity, which is your resource, and then using your spells that use Insanity. So basically keeping dots up while building as much as you can and spending as fast as you can. So there's a whole lot of different builds that you can get into, but I'm going to be going into these specific ones for the different kind of content you're going to be facing. Before we get into that though, I do want to say thank you to everyone for showing all the love recently. We just hit 600 subs, and considering I did my 500 sub giveaway just a couple days ago, this is pretty insane. I think we just got over 100 subs in like 2 days. So that's super awesome. We are doing another giveaway at 1,000, but fuck it, why not? We're going to do another one at 750, just because everyone has been doing so much for the channel lately that I thought it would be cooler to give back a little more. The giveaway we're going to be doing, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, is just another WoW token giveaway. So at 750 subs now and 1,000 subs, we will be doing a WoW token giveaway. I'll basically put all the names of my subscribers in a random selector website, and then I will basically pick the one that wins, and then I will announce it in the next video once we hit 750 subs and 1,000 subs. So if we could hit 1,000 subs by the new year, that would be super duper cool and super awesome. That would mean a whole lot to me. And without further ado, we're just going to get into the video. Enjoy. Alright, so we're going to get into the class itself. I know I did a brief introduction in the beginning, but basically Icy Veins explains it super well. So the Shadow Priest in Shadowlands has evolved into a more modern builder-spender specialization that specializes in your damage over time abilities, and at a high level the spec mostly revolves around keeping your damage over time effects up on as many targets as possible, while also building Insanity to spend on spells that cost Insanity. So pretty much, if you're new, we're going to get into what that means. You have a couple abilities that basically put damage on a whole bunch of targets, a couple talents that you can pick that help keep them up for longer, and just your general rotation and stuff like that. Honestly, it's a super fun class to play. I'm going to throw in some video content at the end of the video, just me doing like an LFR boss, and it's like single target. I think it was the first one in LFR. Even though it's not the first one in normal, which I thought was kind of weird. But that'll be at the end of the video. So yeah, just a quick comparison again. Just like an Affliction Warlock, just keeping your dots on every single target as much as you can, and then just building and spending your resource abilities. So super fun playstyle, and we'll get into the gear and stats that you need to look for. Alright guys, so I know in the last video that I did on Shadow Priest, I was a bit more inexperienced than I am now. I've done a lot more research and I prepared a script so I can read off that a whole lot better. So getting into the stats of what you want to choose in Shadow Priest, you're always going to have Intellect on every single piece of gear, so I'm going to ignore that from the list, but Intellect is your top stat. Following, you're going to go in this order: Haste, and then Critical Strike with Mastery, and then Versatility. So 1 Intellect, 2 Haste, 3 Critical Strike and Mastery. They're kind of tied for that third place spot, and then 4th is Versatility. So typically once you first start gearing in the beginning of your level 60 gearing process, you'll be looking for Haste and Critical Strike pieces, but because Intellect is so strong, Haste with anything at a high item level will just be a good place to start in general. So in single target fights, Mastery is going to totally beat out Critical Strike, but Critical Strike is obviously better for your multiple targets, your big pulls in dungeons, big pulls in mobs, and even like any AoE stuff. You're going to want that. So that's why Critical Strike and Mastery are just kind of ranked the same. With that being said though, I am just going to get into the actual mastery of the Shadow Priest. It is called Shadow Weaving. So The tooltip reads, your damage is increased by 4%, which scales with mastery for each of Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, Devouring Plague on the target. And during Void form, all targets receive the maximum effect. So pretty much your main dots, Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Devouring Plague, these are just going to be enhanced with the more mastery that you have. Obviously, it scales. 4% is just kind of the base. But for me currently, I think mine is at like 8.6 or like 8.7%. So it's not too bad. It's pretty good. It's just like an extra kind of like critical strike chance, I would say. But you know, that's kind of why it's the same bracket as critical strike. That's why it's still third place. So that's the kind of gear that you want to be looking for. For legendaries, what you want to go is Call of the Eternal Void, which drops from the Blood Council and Castle Nathria. But if you don't have it, then there's other ones that you can just kind of choose. But basically the Call of the Void is just kind of your best in slot item that you're always going to want to pick. Other than that, that's kind of the gear and the stats you're going to be looking for. And I will get into the talent build and rotation next. Alright guys, so now we are in the talent section of the guide. I just want to get into the talents before I get into the actual rotation, because with the talents that I select, it'll just help you understand the rotation that I have more. So starting off, we're going to start with our level 15 bracket. You can choose from Fortress of the Mind, Death and Madness, or Unfurling Darkness. Personally, I switch between Fortress of the Mind and Death and Madness, which are kind of the top two that you're going to want to pick. Just kind of depends on what kind of content you're going to be facing. So Fortress of the Mind makes your Mind Flay and Mind Blast deal 10% more damage in addition to generating 20% more insanity, while Death and Madness greatly empowers our Shadow Word Death ability and resets if the target we use it on dies within a few seconds. And then after you get, I believe it's 40 insanity over 4 seconds, and the cooldown of your Shadow Word Death is reset. So definitely that is a whole lot better for your AoE mobs that you're going to be facing, whereas Fortress of the Mind, pardon me, is a whole lot better for your single target, just for the increased damage and insanity generation. Unfurling Darkness is good for AoE too, but it's just a little bit behind Death and Madness. If you use it right, it could be okay, but Unfurling Darkness is just whenever you cast Vampiric Touch on a target, the next VT that you cast is instant cast and just does like 100% of your shadow damage immediately. So it's like 100% of your spell power damage on the target. And there's like a little bit of time before you can use it again. So it's not like you can just spam cast your VTs on a whole bunch of targets. It's just like every 15 seconds where you can get an extra Vampiric Touch on another target. So honestly, Death and Madness is a whole lot better if you're doing your AoE, just because you can get your insanity regen after using Shadow Word Death, especially if you're DPSing a whole bunch of mobs. It's going to keep you pumping out that high DPS and getting you that high insanity regeneration rate. So really cool. So just a quick recap for the level 15. You're going to want to go Fortress of the Mind for your single target, Death and Madness for your AoE. Level 25 tier, basically your tier 2. This is kind of your survivability, I would say. So you have Body and Soul, which basically anyone that you use your Power Word Shield or Leap of Faith on, their target movement speed is increased by 40% for 3 seconds. You have Sand Land, so it reduces the cooldown of your Vampiric Embrace by 45 seconds and increases its healing done by 25%. Vampiric Embrace's ability that you have, it is a defensive ability where every damage that you do gets kind of converted into healing to the lowest HP target in your group. So basically, if you're farming single target content and you're just alone in a group like Torghast, that'll basically heal you instead of anyone else in the group. Then you have Intangibility, which Dispersion heals you for 50% of your maximum health over its duration and has a 30-second reduced cooldown. So that's okay. I find that would be a whole lot better for PvP, but I'm going to save that for another video. I don't use Sand Land because I typically have a bunch of good healers in whatever kind of content I'm facing. And I don't really do Torghast alone just because I have buddies that I run it with. So personally, I'm going to use Body and Soul because Shadow Priests don't really have a bunch of movement enhancing abilities. They have like their Levitate, which is kind of their slow fall, but that doesn't increase their movement speed. That just makes it so they can, you know, just fall a huge height. So Body and Soul definitely comes in clutch for that extra movement speed. So for your 25 bracket, I would definitely pick Body and Soul. For your level 30 bracket, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can use. So you have Twist of Fate. So after damaging a target below 35% health, you gain 10% increased damage and healing for 8 seconds, which is really, really cool. Then you have Misery. So Vampiric Touch also applies your Shadow Word Pain to the target. And then you have Searing Nightmare. a talent that requires shadow form, so instantly deals shadow damage to enemies around the target and inflicts them with SWP, Shadow Word Pain. If the enemy is already afflicted by SWP, Searing Nightmare's damage is increased by 100%. So really, really good. You can kind of pick either or. So Twisted Fate is just kind of like that execute damage. So it's not like a hard execute, but just your damage is increased at that lower health level. So it's really useful when there's not a lot of additional targets to put your dots on. Misery is a really good choice for situations where your targets are spread out, but just kind of a good choice too if you have like less than 4 or 5 targets that are kind of stacked. Really, really good. So I personally rock Misery just because I'm not always in Void form with the kind of content I'm facing right now. We'll get into why Searing Nightmare can be the GOAT though, but personally I rock Misery just because, you know, I'm already casting my VT, might as well get a free Shadow Word Pain out of it. Just saves you time from dotting and all that. That's my personal choice. But Searing Nightmare is really good. It excels anytime you have like spread out targets. It basically does like very similar damage that Twisted Fate does on single target, but just to all of your damage targets that are basically AoE'd. So it's a hard hitting burst AoE ability. It spreads a damage over time effect to all targets, and it helps us get like an easy mastery bonus as well. Basically it just does damage if it already has a dot on the target. So really, really good for AoE content. If you know how to utilize your shadow form and can constantly stay in shadow form a lot more, Searing Nightmare is definitely going to want what you're going to want to pick. If you're facing single target, you're going to want to pick Twist of Fate just for that extra added bonus once they're low health. Extra damage bonus at low health. And then for other AoE, if you find you're not in shadow form but you still want to get that AoE extra dot damage, you're going to want to pick Misery. So that's kind of a summary for the 30 level talent bracket there. Oh, my guy went AFK. That's okay. We'll just go back over here. For your tier 4, your level 35 talents, you're going to want to pick between Last Word and Psychic Horror. I personally pick Psychic Horror just because it's an extra stun, and when you're doing content like Torghast or Mythic Plus and you have to stun some mobs and their abilities, just that extra stun comes in second. So Last Word increases your silence by 15 seconds. Mind Bomb will replace your Psychic Scream and applies a debuff that lasts 2 seconds, which will cause all enemies within the 8 yards of that target you place it on to be stunned for 5 seconds, and then after 2 seconds of casting a spell. So Mind Bomb basically replaces one of your stuns. It doesn't give you an extra one. That's why I didn't pick it. Last Word is good if you just want to bring your interrupt down to a cooldown that is more in line with interrupts of other casters. So like if you find that there's a rotation for interrupts and you just only have to use that one, then perfect, pick Last Word, because your interrupt is going to be 15 seconds less than what it normally would be, and you can just, you know, have it just in case you need it. Psychic Horror though is good for single target. Like you're gonna pick between Last Word and Psychic Horror depending on what kind of content you're doing. If you need an extra stun, Psychic Horror. If you just need your stun to be on cooldown for a lot less amount of time, just pick Last Word. It's really good for whether you need to do like frequent interrupts. Same with Psychic Horror, just because it's an extra stun. So yeah, recap: Last Word for if you're in a stun rotation, and Psychic Horror if you need an extra stun. Personally, I rock Psychic Horror. You'll see my talents that I did that raid boss fight with at the end of the video. I think I just do a quick little showcase of it at the end of the fight. So that is that. For the tier 5 level 40 talents, you have Auspicious Spirits. So your shadowy apparitions now deal 15% increased damage and generate 2 insanity. I'll get into what the shadowy apparitions are once you see in the general rotation. You have Psychic Link. Mind Blast deals 50% of its damage to all other targets afflicted by your VT within 40 yards. And Shadow Crash, so you hurl a bolt of slow moving shadow energy at the destination, dealing basically so-and-so shadow damage to all targets within 8 yards. If it does hit a lone target, they suffer 35% increased damage from your next Shadow Crash within 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 2. So that's just what the tooltip reads. For your Auspicious Spirits, they basically cause like that increased damage, and anytime they do damage, you get 2 insanity. So personally, that's what I rock. It's a decent, like, just you click it, forget about it. You're just going to have consistent damage if you have it clicked, and you just don't have to worry about changing it. There aren't really downsides to this talent, but Shadow Crash can be a whole lot better if you know how to use it. So basically, if you have a whole bunch of mobs, it's going to be a whole lot better if you have Shadow Crash, because that's that instant damage. Whereas if you have dots on all of your mobs already and you keep doing your Mind Blast, your Devouring Plague, your Void Bolt, anything that sends out those shadowy apparitions, that's going to deal way more damage compared to Shadow Crash. I find that Shadow Crash is really good for your quick burst fights, whether it be AoE, single target, whatever. But Auspicious Spirits is really good for your long AoE fights, like raids, any boss fights or stuff like that. So I would personally pick Auspicious Spirits. For your tier 6 level 45 talents, you have Damnation. So basically with a single button press, you can put your Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Devouring Plague all on your target. So your 3 main dots that are increased with your mastery, just on one target. So that's really cool. And if you have that stacked with the cooldown that we mentioned earlier with the Unfurling Darkness, it'll just give you that second free Vampiric Touch too, even though you didn't cast it, but because it was put on with Damnation, it'll give you that second one. I personally don't use it though. We'll get into why. Your second choice is you have Mindbender. So it replaces your Shadow Fiend and summons a Mindbender that is more available more often and longer than the Shadow Fiend, and it generates more insanity on hit. So your Shadow Fiend is basically your pet that you have, and it is on a cooldown, and it only lasts for a certain amount of time, and you basically get insanity every time it hits. But Mindbender basically is a tougher version of your Shadow Fiend, so you get a longer duration of it, and you get more insanity every time it hits. You have Void Torrent, your other one to choose from. So you channel a torrent of void energy into the target, where you deal a huge amount of spell damage to the target over 3 seconds, and you get 60 insanity over the duration. So the kind of content you're going to be facing is basically how you're going to make your choice. So I personally use Void Torrent. It's kind of the clear champion for it. It hits really hard, and it's super easy to fit in the rotation, and it builds up insanity so quick. So if you have your Auspicious Spirits and you're already like going through your insanity, and you have your increased insanity from your Fortress of the Mind, or however you're getting your increased insanity, you're going to be able to get 60 insanity from this, put on your Devouring Plague, send out your spirits, and then you're still doing Mind Blast, doing whatever. If you're in Void form, you'll have Void Bolt. So you're getting a whole bunch of insanity, and this just helps you build it up quick. This will be really good for single target fights more than AoE fights, just because the one target, you'll really be able to focus this just on the one target, because you don't have to worry about trying to keep up damage on other mobs. So I would pick Void Torrent over anything else, but it's all preference. I mean, if you're in open world content questing and you just want to put dots on everyone, pick Damnation. You're going to get instant cast of your 3 dots, and then you're going to get a free VT depending on what talent you chose, and it's just really good for open world like questing and stuff like that. But coming to endgame, I wouldn't really pick it. I would pick Void Torrent. Finally, for your level 50 talents, you have Ancient Madness, Hungering Void, and Surrender to Madness. Ancient Madness, where your Void form increases your critical strike chance by 30% for 15 seconds and reduces by 2% every second. It's okay. Hungering Void, so Void Bolt causes the target to become vulnerable to the Void, increasing their damage taken from you by 10% for 6 seconds. This effect may only be active on one target at a time, though. So whenever you cast Void Bolt on an enemy that is already vulnerable, it extends the duration of your Void form by 1 second or 2 seconds if your Void Bolt critically strikes. So really good, because as a Shadow Priest, you want to be in Void form for as long as possible. This expansion is just an ability rather than something that you can just hop into like a stance. So this has like a cooldown, and you just hop out of it anyways. So if you can extend it as much as you can, this is the way that you want to do it, just because you get that extra haste damage, whatever. And then you have Surrendering Madness. So basically deals a whole bunch of shadow damage to the next target, and it activates Void form. For the next 25 seconds, your insanity generating abilities generate double the insanity, and you can cast them while moving. If the target does not die within 25 seconds within using Surrender to Madness, you also die. So it definitely provides a whole bunch of benefits with Surrender to Madness. You get your increased generation with insanity and stuff like that, and you basically have your ability to do your whole rotation while moving around, which is really good. But if you don't die, or if you don't kill the target, then you die. So definitely in a lot of like raid bosses, this is kind of like your thing that you would pop at the end. and especially if you have Twist of Fate for that extra damage and then you pop this is a really good combo with that you'll be able to get that extra damage at the end of the fight and hopefully finish off the boss a whole lot sooner. Then you have Hungering Void, which is the I would say your main go-to for your single target situations where you're trying to kill a single enemy. So the last Void form, like I talked about in any other expansion, was basically a stance that you hopped into and it didn't kick you out, but you basically got kicked out when you ran out of insanity. So this is, now that it's changed into an ability where you have a time limit before it automatically kicks you out, this is just really good at keeping you in Void form. So it basically gives you like a greater emphasis on your Void Bolt, that you really want to use that as much as possible. I find when I don't use this talent, like if I use Surrender to Madness or Ancient Madness, I find that I don't prioritize my Void Bolt, but using this talent makes you prioritize it, and it'll really just help you basically stay in Void form longer, get those extra damage abilities, and yeah, it'll be really good. Void form is honestly like one of the best things in Shadow Priest. Like the animations that you get from it are super duper cool, just how you're flying around and stuff like that. So not flying around, but you're floating and, you know, tendrils coming out of your back and stuff. A really cool aesthetic. So definitely cool if you can stay in that for a whole lot longer. So I went into the talents already, but we're just going to do a little quick recap. So Death and Madness and Unfurling Darkness for your AoE, Fortress of the Mind for your single target. You're going to want to do Body and Soul for any PvE content, Intangibility for PvP, Twist of Fate for single target, Misery and Searing Nightmare for AoE. Depending on what kind of rotation you're in for stunning, you're going to want to pick Last Word, but if you just want an extra stun, Psychic Horror, Auspicious Spirits for longer fights, Shadowcraft for shorter fights, Void Torrent, you're going to want to pick no matter what, and then Hungering Void, basically for your longer fights, and then Surrender to Madness for your kind of end of fight execute damage that you're going to be popping off at the end of the fight, really boosting your DPS at the end of the fight. So I would just another tool side tip, for Surrender to Madness, if you're wiping a whole bunch and you know you're not going to get into the end of the fight, don't bother selecting it. You can totally get way more damage output with Hungering Void, so I just wouldn't even think about doing Surrender to Madness, but that is just personal opinion. I find like I kill a lot of bosses first try, second try, whether that be like just LFR, Mythic Plus. I think I did like 2 normal bosses of Castle Nathria, and yeah, like I didn't use it, but if I did, I would have popped so much more damage compared to me using Hungering Void or even Ancient Madness, but you never really want to click that. So just Hungering Void and Surrender to Madness for your 50 level talent, and that is pretty much it for your talents. Now we're going to get into the actual rotation and what you want to do. I'm going to show you how Covenants play a big part in it too, and yeah, I'll see you in the next part. Alright guys, what's going on? So I am in front of 3 target dummies. So these are the talents that I'm going to be rocking: Unfurling Darkness, Body and Soul, Misery, Psychic Horror, Auspicious Spirits, Void Torrent, and then Hungering Void. This is kind of like a small AoE pull, so like kind of that first trash mob that you're going to be facing in any Mythic Pluses. Before we get into that though, I'm just going to basically tell you about a couple spells that I missed that we didn't talk about. So we already went over our damage over time effects, so our Vampiric Touch, our Shadow Word Pain, and our Devouring Plague. We also went over Void Torrent, Void Form, and your Shadow Word Death. You also have Mind Flay and Mind Sear. So basically, it looks like this. It's a channeled cast, and Mind Flay is single target. Mind Sear is AoE, so depending on how many targets you hit, it'll build Insanity. So as you can see, AoE is going to be a lot better because it's 6 Insanity over the duration per target hit, compared to just 18 Insanity over the duration. So because it's 3 targets, it's pretty much going to be the exact same. But if I had more than 3, then you can totally just do, you can totally just do Mind Sear and you'll get way more Insanity. Your Void Form, which comes from Void Eruption. So anyone that is within 10 yards is going to be hit with like a little bit of immediate shadow damage, which is really good if you're doing like rated battlegrounds like Ashran or something. It'll just pop off. But even just like Mythic Plus pulls and you just have to pop it, anyone in that 10-yard radius that's an enemy will just get hit with that. You have Power Infusion, so infuse the target with power for 20 seconds, 25% increased haste. your Desperate Prayer, which is kind of like your off heal when you don't have time to cast Shadow Mend, which is your castable heal that you have as a Shadow Priest. Then you have Vampiric Embrace. So we talked about it in one of the talents before, but basically the tooltip here reads that it will fill you with the Embrace of Shadow Energy for 15 seconds, causing you to heal a nearby ally for 85% of any single target shadow spell damage you deal. So in a group setting, it's going to be the lowest HP target, but in your single like damage, like if you're just by yourself, not in a group, it's just going to be you. So like another defensive ability that you have. You have your stuns selected with the talents. You have Psychic Scream, Psychic Horror, and Silence. Silence is your interrupt. This is a AoE stun, and this is a single target stun, the ones I just hovered over. You have your Leap of Faith, which will pull anyone towards you. I wonder if I can get him over here. He's not in my group, so I can't get him over here. But that's all good. Then you just have your Purify Disease, which is kind of like your Dispel that you have for your personal use, or I think you can even use it on other targets. And then you also have your Fade, which is your threat reducing ability. So it reduces it by, I'm not sure how much. Anyways, it reduces it by a certain amount where you basically don't get threat level. This is really good for if you have aggro for some reason, or you're just trying to skip past some mobs and Torghast. Then you have your Power Word Fortitude, so your stamina is increased by 5% for an hour. Anyone in your whole party can get this, so really, really good at increasing their health just for a little bit. I'm going to show you, or I'm going to walk through a little bit of what I do once you hit like AoE targets and stuff like this. For boss fights, it's a little different, but I'm just going to get into the general rotation first. So you're going to want to keep your Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain up on as many targets as possible. Same thing with Devouring Plague, you're going to want to use that on cooldown. You're going to use Mind Blast on cooldown, and depending on how many mobs you're facing, Mind Flay or Mind Sear, whether it's single target or AoE. You're going to want to do Void Torrent anytime you hop into Void form, and you're going to want to hop into Void form whenever there's a big group of targets, or just whenever you're looking for that big damage burst. So yeah, I typically only Void Torrent once I'm in Void Eruption, or if I really just need some insanity. But you can see with the burst, it helps a whole lot better with being in Void form. So I'm just going to show you what the general rotation looks like here, just with the targets I have clicked. So right here, I have 3 targets, so I'm doing that. These are the shadowy apparitions that are sent out. You can see that there. So you're just going to want to keep those up, and when you have Devouring Plague, you're going to want to put that up too. I'm just going to show you the basic burst that you're going to go through. So basically what I do is I pop Power Infusion, my Shadow Fiend, which is like that kind of pet that you have, generates insanity and attacks a target. You're going to want to put your dots on 2 of them because you have basically, you know, the free cast. Then Void Eruption, put it on the next one, spend your Devouring Plague if you can. If not, do a Mind Blast, Void Torrent, Devouring Plague, Mind Blast, and that's pretty much what it is. I'm just going to get into it here. So we're gonna wipe it here, all the data. So I'm going to show you what it looks like here. So pop the Shadow Fiend, then now you have all your buffs going up right here. Void Form, you can already put that on. Mind Blast, and we have the Seer. Devouring Plague on him, Void Bolt, Devouring Plague. And you can see like how many apparitions I'm actually sending out. Whenever you use your Devouring Plague, Mind Blast, or Void Bolt, it sends out those apparitions. So you can see, like, I barely had to use Mind Seer just because I was doing so much damage there. But basically, whenever you're out, this is what you're going to want to hit. So you can see with my burst, just for 3 targets, it was just around 4,200. Obviously, with more buffs that you get from your raid group, that's going to scale as well. But that's just your quick burst. Honestly, you can average probably around 3k if you keep it up after that, which is pretty decent. I mean, I'm 180 item level, don't have a legendary yet because I'm saving up my my Soul Ash just to make the 210 one, just because I know it's not the best in slot, but I still want a pretty decent one. And that's pretty much it for your rotation that you want to keep up. I mean, obviously you're going to want to keep up your dots once they're close to ending, Devouring Plague when you can, and Covenants will play a big thing in a second. I'm just going to show you what I mean when we transfer over to that section. So I'll see you there. Alright, so Covenants. Pretty simple. You're going to want to pick between 2, either I'm pretty sure it's Venthyr or Necrolords. I'm personally Necrolords just because I come across a bunch of AoE content. So I have a extra damage over time ability that hits anyone in an AoE radius, while I think Venthyr has just a single target damage dealing ability that is really, really good. I do a lot of Torghast, so the Necrolord shield that I picked really helped out. So I'll show you guys here. You basically have Fleshcraft, so 20% of your max health for 2 minutes turn into a shield. Obviously, when you have more enemies that you killed nearby, they'll take that into consideration too and make an even stronger shield. And then the class ability that you get is Unholy Nova. So anyone within 15 yards of the target you put it on gets Unholy Transfusion. So it's basically 5k shower damage over 15 seconds to any of the targets, which is really, really good. Just an extra buff that's really, really nice to you because it's an extra damage over time. So it really helps in the DPS catalog. I mean, it could probably put up like an extra like 200 damage per second. So if I was bursting at like 4200, I could definitely hit that 4500 mark, no problem, if I just cast that into that group, which is really, really cool. I'm not too sure on how the Venthyr is for DPS wise because I haven't really played a Venthyr yet, but I know it's that Mind Games one where it's basically a single target damage dealing effect. I've seen some PvP videos where Shadow Priest just absolutely one-shot them, but I know in any BG, like Shadow Priests are kind of like overpowered right now. I mean, I haven't lost a BG since Shadowlands came out, and that's a fact, man. Like they're just really, really good at, you know, just getting dots on everyone and just AoEing them all down, even if they're spread out, which is really, really cool because your AoE abilities just don't have to be stacked. Like they can be like 15 yards over here, 15 yards over there. But you know, I digress. I'm getting off track. Your covenants you're gonna want to pick depending on what kind of content you're facing. So a lot of AoE content, I would definitely pick Necrolords, and a lot of single target content, I would pick Kyrian, depending on what kind of fights you're doing. I mean, this is current as of patch 9.0.2, Castle Nathria, so I mean, it is subject to change. And yeah, I'm just looking at the chat on the side. It seems kind of funny. But that's pretty much it for the Shadow Priest guide. I will get into a quick recap, as well as just show you in the end of the video just some, like, I think it was just the first, I think it was Huntsman Altimor, just me doing some fighting on it. So that'll be at the very end of the video, and I'm going to see you in the recap. Alright guys, so we are now at the end of the video. We are just doing a quick recap. Basically, Shadow Priest is a super, super fun range spec for applying your dots on a whole bunch of players, and then, you know, building your insanity, spending it, and just overall creating a pretty simple rotation once you get the hang of it. And it's really, really fun because once you know what's going to pop up at one time, you can really just maximize how much damage you're doing. I mean, there's been times where depending on the mobs, I've been able to do like a 8k burst, and then because of the amount of mobs that kind of die at the same time and are still alive, I can kind of maintain that around like 5k, which is pretty decent. I mean, I'll be putting up some maybe dungeon content and PvP content soon. I know a lot of people are asking about my UI. That might be coming up soon. But overall, I have a Shadow Priest PvP guide that I kind of have planned. And there's not too much besides that. I mean, I'll have the video that you guys can watch of me doing that fight. But just a quick reminder, thank you for every single one of you that has shown support lately. All the love coming through is super duper nice. I mean, I feel it a whole bunch. I mean, we jumped up 100 subs in a day. We're just over 600 subs now, and I just decided to add in that WoW token giveaway at 750 and 1,000 subs. So be sure to subscribe. It's super easy. All you have to do is sub, and if you did like the video, just put a like down, and you know, you can hit the bell, sub, and you'll just know whenever I upload. So I plan to do a whole bunch more class guides, but since the last Shadow Priest video just got a lot of mixed reviews, I just wanted to clarify kind of the stuff that I missed and kind of stuff that I could have done better on now that I've played this class a whole lot more. I've got about 3 days played on this guy, and holy shit, I got a whole bunch on that hunter too. But this guy I've just gotten super familiar with, so if you have any questions, concerns, comments, just leave them in the comments down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. I love to have a chat in the comments, and yeah, this has been your boy Big Arc. Happy holidays. Hope you all are doing super duper good, and I will see you in the next video. Enjoy the clip.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Margor, make them bleed. This boat has your name on it. Nothing escapes my sight. Margor, make them bleed. Your death will not be. Margast, rend their souls. This boat has your name on it. Margast, rend their souls. You killed my favorite. Acutus, Shadowlands. This boat has your name on it. Acutus, Shadowlands. Acutus, Shadowlands. Rush us! No! I have enough boats for everyone. This boat has your name on it. Nothing escapes my sight. You are the Alpha.